Hi, I'm Dana, and I've very much made content on this channel to try and connect and relate to other autistic people and build a community between us all and sort of have discussions and everything. You know, it's very much here for other autistic people. But I've also had a few comments lately from people who aren't autistic and who watch my videos to try and gain like a better understanding for the people around them or just in general. And it's one of those things where I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting neurotypical people or non-autistic people in general to not be here, to be honest. So it was a nice surprise, and it made me think I should probably actually do some content that is aimed towards helping people understand autism who aren't autistic rather than exclusively helping autistic people I don't know how much I'm helping in general, but I am trying to be useful or helpful in some way, you know. I'm not an educator, I am not trained, I am not a doctor, I'm not very clever, to be completely honest, but I can use my experiences to try and be helpful to people, you know. And it's only recently struck me when getting comments from people that like I can hopefully be a little bit helpful to people who aren't autistic too. That is what I was trying to get at. So today's video is just a little bit like, not exactly a list because obviously I'm going to go into detail, but a few things that I would like and would hope that more non-autistic people are understanding about autistic people, and things that I think people should understand about us to have a more accessible and friendly world, okay? I felt aggressive, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be aggressive, I'm just trying to find the words. And intros are the worst, so we should get better from here on out because I'm going to get into the video now. So first off, we've got that a lot of autistic people are not that different to the rest of yous. Neurotypical people, just general neurodivergent people, a lot of us aren't that different, but we are still different, otherwise we wouldn't be diagnosed autistic. And that plays into, for me, a lot personally, with I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm not trying to be weird, I am trying to get through life at all times. I'm just trying to survive and get through things and deal with things so I can watch my TV shows that I enjoy, okay? I'm very unaware of how I'm being perceived, how I'm coming across to other people, what people are thinking about me, how I'm supposed to behave to people. And that is just because I'm autistic. It's not that I'm trying to be anything. I'm just autistic and I'm existing as an autistic person. But throughout my life, I've had people tell me to stop trying to be weird, stop trying to be a rebel, stop trying to be difficult, you know? I've had all sorts of things where I've been like, I'm just trying to survive. I'm not trying to be anything. And I think that that is something that, like, obviously this is all from my experience and I cannot speak for all autistic people. And I try not to make too many generalizations, but it does just sort of happen sometimes. But I do think that most autistic people are just trying to get through life, and we're just trying to have a remotely nice time. And whatever neurotypical people might think we're doing because of social cues we don't understand and because of various just other parts of being autistic that they don't have a grasp of, there's this assumption that we're trying to be this and we're trying to do that, and everything that we're doing and the way that we're being perceived is intentional, when I don't think for most of us that it is. And I would really like more people to understand that, like, if I seem blunt, I probably don't mean to. Like, if I don't like you, I'm probably doing it intentionally, you know? That's where I'm like, we're not that different. I can still be an asshole to people I don't like. But for the most part, I'm just trying to get through things. I'm not going to be intentionally blunt, intentionally aggressive, intentionally argumentative, whatever other like negative thing that someone might perceive of me. It's probably just because I'm not putting forth like the emotion and the social cues required to show what I'm actually trying to do. And I can't help that, you know? I can learn bits of how to socialise better. I can learn bits of how to I try my best to learn and grow as a person so that I can communicate better with people and the like. I think all of us can learn all the time, but I also know that as an autistic person there's some things that I'm just never going to be able to do. That's why it's a disability, that's why it's a diagnosis you receive. Which leads me into my next point perfectly, which I kind of just said, to be honest with you, which is that it is a disability. As much as we can all learn and change and grow as people, there are things that I will just never be able to do. There are just ways that I'm always going to be because I'm autistic. There isn't a cure, there isn't a tablet I can take. This is just how I am as a person. And as much as I can try my best and try to learn and try to grow, I have a disability that prevents me from being particularly good at communicating and socialising, you know? I'm never just going to be able to learn all of those skills that it takes. I'm never going to be able to learn, especially like the subconscious use of like social cues and body language and the like. That's just not going to happen for me. I can try my best and I can get better at it, but I'm never going to be on par with neurotypicals for it. If I was, I wouldn't be autistic, you know? And as much as I really appreciate that a lot of people are like normalising the idea of people around you being autistic, I think that it can also be quite negative in the way that people sort of assume that if so many people are autistic, it can't be that hard to be autistic. It must not be like a real disability and whatever else. When the truth of it is that it very much is a disability. And a lot of the time when you see autistic people who are doing well, behind closed doors, they're probably having to take a lot of rest time and really like emphasize caring for themselves and doing what they can in order to be able to do that stuff the rest of the time. Which takes me to my next point, that I think there needs to be much better understanding that autistic people aren't lazy. We just don't have the same battery, we don't have the same brain type, Ashley, you know? I just cannot do as much and cope with life in the way that neurotypical people can, and that's probably not going to change an awful lot, you know? Like, unemployment rates are quite high amongst autistic people. I see different numbers all the time, so I'm not going to give you a statistic, but it is like, as far as I've seen reported, usually well over 50% of autistic people are unemployed. And I think it's very much because most jobs, you know, you do it every day. I know you might get the weekend off, or you might get like a chunk of days here and there, but most jobs you have to do every day. And I physically cannot do that. If I've done something on one day, I need at least a day's rest. And from what I've seen, that is quite usual for a lot of autistic people. Like, I didn't cope well with school and I dropped out of college because I don't understand how people can do a thing like every single day. I have so many sensory issues, I have so much anxiety. It just, doing something like a job in a day, you know, it completely exhausts me. And it's one of those things where people like to be like, everyone gets tired at work. And yes, everybody gets tired at work. But I am talking like, I will get home, watch 20 minutes of a show, go to bed and go to sleep. And then if I've got work the next day, you know, I'm having to get up at like 4 or 5 a.m. because I'm so anxious about it that I need to get everything ready. I need to be able to fulfill my routine, because if I don't do my routine, that just massively increases my anxiety for the day, means that I'm way more likely to have a meltdown. You know, it's all stuff like that where I assume neurotypical people don't have to think about it that way and don't have to plan things that way and just don't exist like that. But I don't have another choice because that's how my brain works. So I think that, you know, like, a lot of this will be personal trauma because it's my experience, but I've so often been called lazy and been seen as someone who just can't be bothered, when the truth of it is that I am putting my absolute all in, and things are just so much more exhausting as an autistic person and so much more tiring and take so much more effort, and the recovery time that I require after them is much more extensive and longer than a neurotypical person's would be, if you even need any rest time. Like, neurotypicals seem to just like be go all the time. Like, people are going to work and then going and seeing friends afterwards, and like, that is insane to me. I do like one thing in a day and need a day's rest, you know? And that sort of leads me into my next point as well, which is that I don't know what normal is. As much as I can make assumptions, and honestly a lot of my understanding of how like neurotypical people and general, like just the general public are, comes from television. I've spent hours upon hours, like days and days and months watching TV shows and sort of dissecting human behaviour from that, and that's how I've come to understand what's normal in the world, because that's sort of like, I see it as a generalised view, you know, like a bunch of people have come together and created a thing. It must be the normal thing that they all understand and all do and agree upon. So as much as like I've tried to build it up off of that, I've had a lot of times where people have been like, why are you acting like you're in a movie? Why are you acting like you're in a TV show? And I'm like, because I thought that was how everyone else acts. I have no concept of what normal is. I don't have this baseline for what normal is. So if I'm doing something really weird, chances are that I'm doing it because I think everyone else does it and everyone else thinks it's normal, and I've just got a completely wrong end of the stick. And similarly, I had a phase of dressing in high school in a way that I now acknowledge was very weird. You know, like I was wearing a top hat with a prom dress with like different coloured Converse. But at the time, as a teenager who had like, you know, even less lived experience and less understanding of it all, I just knew that like, people can choose clothes based on what they enjoy. I've watched Helena Bonham Carter and Tim Burton and Winona Ryder and that like brand of celebrity who are a bit quirky and a bit weird. So I was like, it's completely normal and acceptable for me to wear a top hat with my prom, like not, it was a prom dress, but it wasn't like my prom dress, you know, I didn't go to prom. I was just like on the day to day wearing a prom dress with a top hat and different colour Converse. And it was one of those things where I was like, I know this is a little bit quirky, but everyone else was like, why are you dressed like a circus freak? And I was like, I'm just a little bit quirky, surely. I'm just having a little like Helena Bonham Carter moment. You know, I really had the concept of it being a much more like normal way of dressing than it actually was. And that's just one thing that I've like come to realise now that I'm older. There's probably stuff that I'm doing right now that's a very similar type of thing that I just don't have a different baseline for normal yet to know that I'm doing something that isn't normal. So the point of telling you that is that I just wish there was more understanding that a lot of the time when autistic people are doing weird things, when we're doing things that you wouldn't expect, when we're doing things that you don't necessarily even like, we're probably not doing it with like, again, any sort of like vindictiveness, like malice or whatever. We just don't know what's normal, or at least I don't. Again, I'm not trying to make generalizations, but also like I'm aiming this at neurotypicals with my experience, so there's going to be some degree of generalizations. But yeah, that was my point. And my final point at the end here, like there's definitely loads more, but I want to keep this kind of like short and brief to see if there's actually like any sort of want for this kind of content, if there's any sort of actual engagement with it. But like I don't want to just make pointless videos, you know. If this is something you'd like to see more of, let me know and I will make more of them. But my final thing is I'm saying what I mean. You know, I might have to ramble to get there. I mean, it might take me a while. I might massively over-explain, but you don't need to read between the lines. And like, again, I don't want to make generalizations, but I've had this conversation with a lot of my autistic friends and they've agreed with me, where there's so like dozens upon dozens of times that I've sent someone like a simple, like polite to me text, and it's become this whole argument. And when I'm like, why are you arguing with me? They're like, because you've been argumentative. And I'm just like, I said this, and they're like, yeah, but you meant this, and I'm like, I didn't. I said what I meant. I used my words because I understand what words mean, and I said what I meant. But from what I've seen and from my experiences, neurotypicals have so much more than just the words that go into a conversation, you know. You've got, when it's in person, you've got like body language and social cues and all of that stuff going on, and over text, like someone that I've regularly had this with will often be like, would you mind doing this? And I'll be like, yeah, I would a bit actually. And they're like, why are you? And I'm like, you asked if I minded, and I do. If it needs to be done, just tell me, hey Dana, this needs to be done, and I'll do it. I don't, you know, I don't understand why you would ask if I mind something if it's not okay for me to mind it. Things like that. Like, I wouldn't ask someone, do you mind doing this? Unless it was fine for them to say no. But neurotypicals seem to ask that and mean it as a demand. And things like that I just will not do. I will ask exactly what I want to ask. I will say exactly what I mean to say. And it absolutely baffles me the amount of times that my words get completely taken out of context, because there's reading between the lines and there's this context to it and there's this. And I'm like, no, there literally isn't. I say exactly what I mean, and that is why a lot of the time I will massively over explain. Like, God bless my friends putting up with me sending like 8 paragraphs to explain like a very simple thing, but I'm saying exactly what I mean. I'm including all the context, because I don't know which parts of context are important. That's another one. Like, if you have an autistic person telling you loads and loads and loads of things, it's probably not because we necessarily like the one I get a lot is that I'm ranting, or that I'm like, I must really think about this all the time. And it's like, no, it's just that right in this moment, this is all the context that I have. This is all the stuff that I know about this thing. And I don't know which bit's the important bit. So if I put it all out there, I'm expecting someone else to know what's the important bit of it all, you know? Like, the idea that autistic people are just inherently nicer than neurotypical people isn't one that I believe to be true. And I think it's very odd, because I've known some autistic people are absolute assholes, but I do kind of think that it stems from the fact that we are often just saying exactly what we mean, you know? Like, it's one of those things where I very much am of the opinion personally that the main issue for autistic people and neurotypical people communicating is just that we have different communication styles. But it seems to often make the neurotypical people angry, because I think a lot of the time they're people that haven't necessarily been around a lot of like neurodivergent people and sort of expect everybody to have the same communication style as them, when that's just not the case. Like, I have sort of like extended friends now who are not autistic, if not neurotypical, you know, and I feel like I get on with them and I'm able to like form connections and actually have friendships with them, because they just forgive a lot of things. There's probably a lot of stuff in conversation that they would perhaps take in a different way or perceive in a different way if they didn't know I was autistic, but because they do, they just adjust their communication style to accommodate to me and to be like sort of like allow communication to actually happen. And I don't feel like it's that hard, but a lot of people just don't seem willing to do it, you know? And I'd like to think that that comes from like ignorance and not knowing that that's something to do and not understanding about autism. So hopefully this video can help a tiny little bit with that, you know? If just one person watches this and takes a little something from it, to be like, honestly, I think that everyone would benefit from just being a little kinder in our day-to-day lives, regardless of if it's to autistic people. But also, be nice to your autistic friends, be nice to autistic people you come across, you know, like, until they prove to be an asshole, because plenty of autistic people are assholes, until they prove that they actually are and you're not just miscommunicating, misperceiving or whatever else, just try and be a little bit friendly and kind, please. If you liked this video and want more content like this, do let me know and I'll make more videos that are sort of more similar to this. But in the meantime, I will continue posting my regular content on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Sundays. You can, as always, subscribe and like my videos, and you can also follow me over on TikTok where I post daily, or on Instagram or Twitter where I post with much less frequency, to be honest. If you would like to monetarily support an autistic person, you can donate to me over on Ko-fi, or you can become a Patreon member. I post videos earlier over there, and I'm going to actually engage with people more and do more stuff over on Patreon, because people are paying me and they deserve that for their money. But also a lot of you are just supporting me to be nice, and that's very much appreciated. But that's all I have to say for today. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you have a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year, and I will see you again in a couple of days.